Alright, this is my reflection on weeks 5 and 6 of my course Educating Diverse Populations. So the sources in weeks 5 and 6 discuss issues that are extremely pertinent to my immediate work as an EBA instructor at a private special education school that serves students ages 6 to 22. These students are primarily on the autism spectrum with accompanying behavior and physical disabilities. Since our entire student body has special needs, you wouldn't think we would have the problems with negative attitudes among staff and peers that were outlined in Milsom's article, but I have unfortunately observed them at least on a small scale. Some examples are during arrival, when I walk with a student who's known to have violent outbursts in the past during transitions, and seeing staff walk by that make scared faces or scurry the other way, or when I hear people say they never want to work in my classroom because it's so behavioral and overwhelming. It's a little disappointing when some students with disabilities are taught their best potential because they are perceived as quote unquote having a chance compared to the students with lower programming and more behavioral issues. These students are often judged and defined by their worst behavior when they have a unique personality and a dynamic set of skills waiting to be tapped into. I have a student in my class who often points out the behaviors of his peers and states that they are quote unquote not autistic like he is, and that he wishes he could have peers that he could talk to. It's really interesting how students with varying abilities distinguish themselves and can take note of the differences that other people on the autism spectrum can exhibit. When I'm working with a student, I often talk to him about bullying and how it's okay not to like or be best friends with his peers, but he does need to respect them. That's a requirement. I'm proud that he advocates for himself and that he wants to socialize with other students in the school, and he should have the right to do that. We are going to trial giving him opportunities to go to another class for their morning meeting or a fun Friday activity and go from there. I'm very intrigued at the concept of inclusive education. That was a factor across a lot of these readings in the Disability Week. Um, and I'm curious and I want to consider how it can be better applied in a setting like mine, where all students may have special needs but have varying verbal, social, and academic abilities. My students do have interests in common, and I hope to create more opportunities for them to socialize and enjoy activities together. So this material over the past 2 weeks has also helped me decide what I'm going to do for my final project, which is creating a workplace diversity plan. My focus is likely going to be race and culture and how they influence the behavior analytic education provided to students with autism spectrum disorder in my school. I've worked in my job for less than a year, but we've had a considerate amount of professional development training, which is really good. We have professional development days roughly every 2 months, a half-hour training, one Thursday or one Wednesday per month, and an entire training week in August. The training has been very helpful for the job, however, there have been no diversity trainings that center around how to be culturally responsive to our students or anything to address the identity of staff. I think there is an assumption that because our students struggle with functional communication and in most social situations, speaking about race, culture, and how that affects them is too advanced for their understanding or comes secondary to their safety. For example, in many cultures, families see a person with a disability as a pity and someone that needs to be taken care of for their entire life, like a burden. And growing up at the intersection of disability and immigrant, Lagaretta mentions that while her family held these ideas, they became the service providers that she could not receive out of school due to the lack of money and immigration status. It's important to keep in mind as educators that families, even if they may have distorted views on autism treatment or expect their kids to be cured, they do want the best for their kids, and it takes a village to help them succeed. The system may be working against them in many ways. Students and families, both in like racist, xenophobic, and ableist ways, but providing a safe classroom where students are comfortable to share their concerns, feelings, and advocate and receive the help they need makes a tremendous difference. In Whiteman's article, How I Navigated New York City's High School Admissions Maze in a Wheelchair, it was amazing for me to read a nonverbal student use written words so eloquently in an article. It blew me away. The adversities that the author overcame to attend their desired high school gives me hope and makes me wonder what I could do or how education can be tailored to help my students possess similar independence. I also have a student with cerebral palsy. In in my class who is able to walk, and I have 3 students who are considered nonverbal, with one who has 0 words in his verbal repertoire. They use AAC devices with 1 to 3 word phrases, and I often wonder what more they have to say, or how can their thoughts be more coherently communicated to others. I want to learn more about how computers and word processors could possibly assist students in my school, like the one Waitman uses. The main takeaway I got from this article was how inaccessibility can really hinder the most basic things that other youth and students may take for granted, like attending a high school you can safely navigate through. In 5 years from now, I strive to be a board certified behavior analyst, specifically in a public school district, so I can not only assist special educators and general education teachers designing IEPs and behavior support plans, but to advocate for accessibility through the school for students with physical disabilities like visual and hearing impairments and wheelchairs. Another thing to consider is relative age and the effects of academic redshirting on advancing kindergarten and elementary curriculum to the point where students of an appropriate age for kindergarten, who might also live in poverty or be in a racial ethnic minority, are in danger of being held back a grade or two, which has been shown to decrease success in adulthood and obviously struggles throughout school. Disabled or young, it was stated that parents and schools may use special education classification in part to target supplemental services to students whose disability may simply be relative youth. This makes me wonder if the raising of the school start age in the US could lead to less special education disability diagnoses. To paraphrase Professor Tapley's question in week 6's third lecture, could we save valuable time and ensure students are on their best trajectory for success if students aren't perceived disabled due to relative age, race, socioeconomic status, or gender? I believe the answer is yes. Being young isn't a disability, but based on the studies in the Dewey and Lipscomb article, statistics show that younger students are more likely to be diagnosed with a disability compared to their older counterparts who started school late. This is in conjunction with the many benefits outlined in the Finland article by Gomez and the School at Age 8 reading, which feature the advocacy of the homeschooling community and an international model of free, high quality preschool for all, which show that there are more improved outcomes for students who start school late or later than what the age is that the US currently starts at, as long as they have those resources. So obviously it doesn't matter what those students are doing in that time, especially if they're cared for adequately and have access to engaging learning activities that they can investigate at their own pace. I wonder how special education students with disabilities are cared for in social democratic societies, um, such as Finland, that we've read about, and how much starting school later plays a role in generally lowering the rate of intellectual disability. Lastly, I applaud Broderick in her paper on differentiating instruction for disabled students in inclusive classrooms, and I strongly agree with her criticisms on keeping students with disabilities separate from their neurotypical peers. In my experience, the limits of separate classrooms and curricula contribute to limited opportunities for disabled learners and exacerbates disability labels. Inclusive education, by contrast, isn't just about ensuring disabled and non disabled peers learn alongside each other, but it exists to resist the dominant inclusion by exclusion methods by targeting the full spectrum of identity challenges that are seen in a public school or any type of school: poverty, second language acquisition, racial, ethnic discrimination, disability, etc. It's also helpful to remember while working with students with diagnosed disabilities that disability is not a fact or static condition. Rather, it's a social construct, much like race and sex are. This reading, along with the breadth of resources on disability shared in this class, have steered me in a helpful direction in my own work as an inclusive special educator. I will always opt to assume my students can comprehend beyond their ability, and when I'm in the position to write lesson plans, I will include engaging and varied learning opportunities that involve discourse and the practice of problem solving skills. Thank you.